in the United Kingdom long before we get anywhere near Brexit. So this will be a UK law, and not least of which the three major governments pushing for GDPR were the British government, the German government, and the Lithuanian government. Surprisingly enough, they were the three countries really pushing for this. So for something that we have been pushing for, it is highly unlikely that we would not adopt it. And I say, and this will become mandatory British law long before Brexit happens anyway. So you can rest assured that we have to focus on doing GDPR as much as anybody else. Now, as far as the UK is concerned, we took the original Data Protection Directive from 1995 and converted that into the Data Protection Act in 1998, and that's certainly the one that is governing operations in the United Kingdom at the moment. That is the law that GDPR will supersede. So for me, this is really manna from heaven, really focusing on my area of specialisation. I presented at a conference back in March time, and the organisers of that particular conference referred to me and posted all over Twitter that Ian West, the godfather of GDPR, would be presenting, which frankly was a rather scary thought for me. I'm not quite sure they wanted me to do my Marlon Brando impression or my James Brown impression. The good news is I did neither. So the purpose of today, and as Anthony said, it's probably easier to keep questions until the end if we possibly can. By all means, scribble them on the Q&A pad as we go. If there's anything that arises, and we will try and answer them towards the end of the session. It's just easier on the webinar to do questions at the end than try and take them as we go through the presentation. The presentation I'm going to take you through today is from an organisation called the GDPR Institute. For those of you not familiar with the GDPR Institute, this is an organisation that was created in Switzerland about 2.5 years ago now. I became a member of this about a year ago, and the reason I became a member was I really liked the members base not-for-profit status, and what they were looking to do was just help companies fix the GDPR problem. That's what the Institute is all about. So for anybody not familiar with the Institute, I would urge you to go and spend a little bit of time, take a look at it. Purely from the point of view, it is a great resource repository for knowledge, insight, etc. I'll take you a dash through some of the slides here. So the founders of the Institute kindly agreed for me to share this presentation with you today. So I just want to take you through a quick dash as to how they're approaching the market and how they see the action plan as far as GDPR is concerned. So without further ado, why don't we bowl in? So for any of you that are not that familiar with GDPR, it is a phenomenally simple subject. Okay, it is all about putting control of your data back with you. Okay, as opposed to the organisation that holds your data. So GDPR is all about trust. There's nothing but trust. Do I like you? Do I trust you? Am I going to share my data with you? And if so, what are you then going to do with it? And that is all GDPR is all about. But this puts the control of your data back with what the regulation refers to as the data subject. The data subject is the person whose data is being held. In this case, it's you. It's your own personal data. You now own and control it. Truth of the matter is, you always owned and controlled it. But this regulation really stiffens up the ability for you to be able to control your data in a way you've never controlled it before. So GDPR at its most simple level is trust, and actually what it is enterprise-wide trust, because GDPR now touches everything that happens with a piece of data. And a lot of people, a lot of organisations that I speak to are focusing specifically on customer data, and that's the one that everybody instantly gravitates towards. But it is much wider than just customer data. Okay, and let me touch on that and give you a little bit more detail here. So in simple terms, the impact of GDPR is focusing on any organisation that controls or processes personal data about any EU citizens, and that is in its broadest sense. And when I use the term EU citizens, what I'm meaning is customers, employees, suppliers, contractors, subcontractors, if you're government bodies, citizens, if you're healthcare individuals, patients, you name it. It's in the broadest sense of person data. And if you're holding any of this information, you've got until the 25th of May of next year to go fix the problem. So what's that? About 8.5 months. And if you don't fix this, and you have a data breach, and the likelihood is you will have a data breach. And I was posting on LinkedIn only a few minutes ago about the massive data breach that Equifax, one of the two major global credit referencing agencies, have had in the last couple of days, where they've lost 143 million people's details, including all their social security details, etc., in North America. And interestingly, Equifax was one of the organizations that had been contracted by the US government to protect personal data, and they've just reported a data breach with 143 million people's data having gone. So what you will have to do is manage the fines associated with this, and also the reputational damage that goes with every data breach. Now, for those again not familiar with the regulation, the regulation has really stiffened up the financial penalties, and the headline act is up to 4% of your last year's global annually reported turnover, or up to 20 million euros, whichever is the greater. So if you're a small company, obviously 20 million euros will be the greater. If you're a major corporation, then you potentially 4% of your last year's turnover could be a huge amount of money. I think we're all familiar with the breaches that was announced by Yahoo about 12 months ago now, where they originally said we've lost 500 million records to the Chinese. They then went on to say, about a month later, said we haven't lost 500 million records. We believe we've now lost 1.1 billion records, and we believe they've lost them to the Russians. In Yahoo's case, the 4% fine would undoubtedly have been levied, because they waited 2 years before telling anybody that they'd had a data breach, and the regulation now says you have 72 hours to tell the regulator you've had a data breach. That's not 2 years and 72 hours, it's 72 hours. So the fact that Yahoo waited 2 years means they would have incurred the full 4%. In Yahoo's terms, that would have been a fine of $197 million. And any CFO who is writing a check for $197 million as a fine is going to find that very, very painful. So what you have to do here is look at the fines and also the reputational damage. Your customers won't trust you, they will go elsewhere, shareholder value will decline, executives will get fired. So the reputational damage is colossal. And again, I can take you through any specific examples on that as well. There are numerous good examples starting to emerge of the reputational damage as well. So let's move on and look at what the Institute is focused in on. So almost every organisation that I talk to at the moment sees GDPR as a challenge. They initially start with it's a tick box exercise. It's something that has to be endured. I have to overcome it, etc. Now, if your perception is that's how you see GDPR, then you are going to have a perpetual problem with GDPR well beyond May of next year. The really enlightened organisation, on the other hand, are actually now seeing GDPR as an opportunity. They're seeing it as an opportunity to create a new paradigm around data privacy, and also create a standard that all of their competitive organisations have to adhere to. And this is a major repositioning of some big corporate entities who are saying, I can now reposition my company as being the trusted agent. And younger, more nimble startup businesses who've been stealing market share from me are going to now start to have problems. So do you see it as a challenge or an opportunity? And that is really a perception at executive level. However, the Institute was put together for one reason and one reason only, and that was to create a community of privacy, security and governance experts to assist large, medium and small organisations to address the challenge, but also very much maximise the opportunity available to them. And organisations who are seeing GDPR as an opportunity will have a much greater outcome, much greater positive impact on the bottom line of their business. So what has the Institute done? It's brought together 8 different communities of individuals. Well, first of all, in the red circle there, the corporate clients, and that's pretty obvious, and by corporate clients I mean large, medium and small. It's also brought together a community of 61 million global experts in the privacy, security and governance space. And it's brought them together in around 6 core propositions. And 6 core propositions are the other circles there. So consulting providers, yes, you will need to use a consulting business unless you intend to do a mass recruitment of GDPR skilled people. Technology providers, so the Institute has created a very sophisticated 7-layer model of what you need, 7-layer architecture of the things you would need to have in place for GDPR. That starts with understand at its lowest level, but it runs through layers of mitigate, measure, and right the way up through to the audit capability, which is the thing that you will need to do ongoing. So GDPR, very much unlike year 2000, doesn't drop dead on the 25th of May of next year. This is something that is going to be impacting your business, and you need to do an annual audit of that. And so the 7-layer technology architecture has been laid out by the Institute, which I think is very comprehensive, and it has dozens of solution areas and potential vendors that you should look at. So again, I would strongly advise anybody that's not familiar with what to do and how to do it to go and have a look at that technology stack the Institute has brought together. But 4 other communities that the Institute has created. One is around legal advisory services. So GDPR is a law, the Institute certainly would advise you to go and speak to a lawyer if you haven't done already, either your in-house legal advisor or your external corporate lawyer. Go and do so. You need to seek legal advice on this. Recruitment services. So recruitment, there will be a whole host of new people you will need to hire. Certain organisations are legally required to go and hire a DPO, which is a data privacy officer, and that DPO role is a regulatory only, cannot have any operational responsibility in the business, and has to be reporting in at board level. This is the person who has responsibility for making sure that the organisation is the right side of the law when it comes around to data protection. So a lot of organisations need to go and hire DPOs, and I've seen a few people who said, "Oh yeah, I'm a DPO, but I've worked with the company for the last 15 years." So that's not allowable under the terms of the regulation. There has to be somebody who has zero operational responsibility in the company. It's just purely regulatory. Training, you will need to train all of your people, and I've already touched on audit services. So they're the 8 communities, and how that gathers together is quite simple. It is all around the corporate client looking to create a GDPR defensible position. So these are all the things that you need to bring together in your organisation to create a truly defensible position. Note here I'm using the term defensible position and not to be compliant. It is physically impossible for any organisation to be compliant with GDPR at the moment. Physically impossible. So all you hope to do is create a defensible position. So really going back to the opportunity or challenge, you've got to think of it in 2 ways. So you've got the cost of being compliant, and I've had lots of conversations with senior executives who said, well, isn't this just a tax of doing business in Europe? Yes, I'll have a breach every year. I'll just pay the tax. I'll put 4% of my revenue to one side. If I have a breach, I'll pay the fine. And pretty much that's how people treated the Data Protection Act. The problem with the Data Protection Act, it had a maximum fine of £500,000. And paying £500,000 as a fine was relatively easy for most organisations. Today, when you're paying tens or hundreds of millions of dollars as fines, that's a whole different ballgame. So the things you need to look at are the size of the fines, the loss of customers, and the reputational damage. So if I look at the data breach that TalkTalk had, which is very pertinent in the United Kingdom, they had a data breach in October 2015. They had 4 million customers. They lost 157,000 records from their test and dev system. So the hackers got nowhere near production, and they found a vulnerability in their test and dev. They took 157,000 records, which has just been a subset straight out of the 4 million production database, something that you should never do, and if you do, certainly you should anonymize the data. Of those 157,000 records, 18,000 of them had their bank account details taken, and nearly 30,000 had credit card details taken. Now that was bad enough. I mean, the regulator then hit them with a fine of 400,000 sterling, which was 80% of the maximum they could have got, and 80% of the maximum they could have got under GDPR was a smidge over £61 million. So that's the order of magnitude change. But actually, TalkTalk lost a little over 1 million customers. So of their 4 million customers, 1 million of them went somewhere else in the preceding year because they just didn't trust the business any longer. The share price went down by 64%. So in the month following the breach, the share price went down by 64%. And in February of this year, Dido Harding, the chief executive of TalkTalk, was fired. So that's the fines, loss of customers, reputational damage, etc., etc., etc. The things on the right-hand side of the scale stack up massively. So don't think of this as just a tick box, a tax. It's not going to work that way. These are the sort of things that will put a company out of business. So if we look a little bit more closely at what GDPR is. GDPR is enterprise-wide change management. There isn't a single facet of a company that is not touched by GDPR. And this ranges all the way from the post room to the boardroom. Simple example, if I was to come and visit your building today and I walked into reception, signed my name into your visitor's book, is that a GDPR compliant process? Absolutely not. Me signing my name in your visitor's book is just saying, I've arrived in the building, I'm here to see John Smith, and you now have a duty of care to look after me whilst I'm here. What it's not there to do is to inform everybody who walks into your office after me that I've been to visit John Smith, which is what all visitors' books do. And I do it myself. I'm particularly good at chatting to a receptionist, arrive 10 minutes early, chatting to a receptionist, flicking back through the visitors' book, see who's visited over the past few weeks. Just something as simple as coming to visit your building is now non-GDPR compliant. So this really is enterprise-wide change management. It is across the whole spectrum. And interestingly, what it does, it touches not just the data, but it's touching all of your people, all of your processes, all the technology, as well as the information associated with that. So your receptionist needs training, your chief executive needs training, all your sales and marketing people need training, all your IT people need training, all your HR people need training, all your procurement and supply chain people need training. All of these individuals are all coming into contact with personal data. They all need to clearly understand what they can and cannot do with that data from now on. So when I say enterprise-wide change management, I do mean every part of it. Now, if you want to have access to a site to give you a view as to the size and scale of some of these breaches that are happening, I'd urge you to come and look at this particular website. www.informationisbeautiful.net. What a fabulous name for a website. This particular website, as you can see down the left-hand side of the screen there, breaks it down by date. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you can filter by type of organisation, so what industry they're in. You can also sort by how the leak happened. Were they hacked? Was it an internal breach or whatever? And you can then, this is a great place to go if you want to have some supporting information to share with your executives on the size and scale of the problem here, and more importantly, how it relates to your organisation. Get a view of some of how your competitors around the world have suffered from data breaches. But be under no illusion, while the headline act is hackers breaking in, the bottom line is most data breaches happen internally. Over 95% of data breaches happen by your own people doing stuff with data they're not meant to be doing. Okay, well, this is a really good site. I do all of you to use this as part of your justification when you're looking at a business case creation. The one thing I can say with a high degree of certainty is you will have a data breach, and this cartoon perfectly encapsulates what will happen. So you can stack up all the technology that the world has available today. So firewalls, encryption, antivirus, security blankets, you name it. You can stack all of those things up, but you will never ever stop the human error. Okay, And rarely will that human error be malicious. When it is malicious, it's obviously that has its own connotations. But you will have a data breach just by one of your own staff doing something they're not meant to do. So that's where training becomes really, really critical. So key questions that you should be asking and you should be seeking answers to. So the first one is, what personal data do you hold? Does your organization hold? Customer, employee, supplier, contractor, subcontractor, citizen, patient, etc., etc., etc. All the ones I've already touched. Okay. So what data is your organization holding? The second question you should then ask is, where is that data located? Is it on the hard drive on your laptop? Is it in some remote storage or backup device in an iron mounted warehouse? Is it on an on-premise database in a database server sitting next to your SAP application server? Or is it in the cloud? And if it's in the cloud, who's got it and where is it? Where is that cloud located? There is no such thing as a cloud, by the way. Let's not get wound up about this. All the cloud is a piece of IT hardware that's located somewhere else. Okay, it is a piece of hardware. It is just somewhere else. Anybody that believes their data is held in the cloud is delusional. So you need to know, where is that box that's got your data on it? Where is that physically located? Is it just down the road in the United Kingdom? Is it somewhere else in the European Union? Is it in a server farm in Bangalore? Is it on the West Coast in San Francisco? You need to know that. You need to be able to answer that question, because that organization providing that service to you, they have to be GDPR compliant as well. So real major implications here. The third question you need to be able to answer is, how are you using that data? So to what purpose are you using the data, that personal data that you are holding about individuals? Again, key question that a lot of organizations struggle to answer. And the final question, which is the hardest of all of them, is, do you have explicit or implied permission to use the data in the way you're using it? So a simple example I would give you is the likes of Apple. I'm sure most people on the phone are either an iPad user or an iPhone user or whatever, which requires you to do an iOS update every so often. And you do your iOS update, and once it comes on, you then have the accept the terms and conditions. You just scroll to the bottom and you click I accept. That is no longer permissible in the GDPR. You cannot have one blanket acceptance box, and you certainly can't have a blanket acceptance box that's already ticked. And many of those acceptance boxes are already completed, and you just say I accept. Now what the organization has to do is say, this is the data I'm holding, this is the purpose I'm looking to use it to, these are the partners I'm looking to share it with, this is what they're going to do with it, etc. And you need to give everybody an explicit yes, no. Can I use that data? Yes or no. Can I share it with this partner? Yes or no. Can I use it to do this? Yes or no. All of those things you need to have as a very explicit process. Okay, so the signing up and signing your life away on a checkbox on their website is no longer permissible. So what does the roadmap look like? I've already touched on the fact that this is a